The sky above Kepler 442b burned red as massive ships tore through the atmosphere like angry gods. Captain Hyun pressed his luminescent hands against the viewport of his research vessel and watched his world die below. The crystalline cities that had stood for thousands of years crumbled under the relentless bombardment from the Ravager fleet. His people, the Villani, had never known war. They were gentle beings who spent their lives tending to the great forest cities and sharing thoughts. Through their natural telepathy, their technology focused on harmony with nature, not weapons of destruction. When the first Ravager scouts had appeared at the edge of their system 3 days ago, the Villani Council had tried to communicate, to understand what these newcomers wanted. The answer came in the form of plasma fire that turned the outer moon colonies to dust. "Captain, we need to leave now," whispered his navigator, Sarah, her deer-like features twisted with fear. Through the ship's hull, they could feel the psychic screams of their people as the Ravagers harvested everything they could find. The invaders cared nothing for Villani lives or culture. They saw only resources to be consumed. Yun's research. Vessel Star Whisper was small and fast, designed for deep space exploration rather than combat. It was one of the few Villani ships that might escape the system alive. Around them, the few remaining Villani defense craft threw themselves desperately at the massive Ravager harvesters, their energy weapons barely scratching the enemy hulls, before being swatted aside like insects. "Set course for the jump point," Hyun ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of abandoning his world. "Maximum speed!" The Star Whisper's engines hummed to life, pushing the small vessel away from the dying planet. Behind them, the largest Ravager ship, a monstrosity the size of a small moon, positioned itself above the Villani capital. Its harvesting beams began stripping away the planet's surface, consuming everything: buildings, forests, even the soil itself. Hyun forced himself to look away. In the ship's cargo bay, 43 Villani survivors huddled together, mostly children and researchers who had been aboard orbital stations when the attack began. They were all that remained of 1 billion souls. "Captain," called his communications. "Officer Nala, I'm detecting pursuit. 3 Ravager fighters closing fast." The Star Whisper shuddered as enemy fire grazed their shields. Hyun gripped his command chair as his pilot, Kito, threw the ship into evasive maneuvers. The Villani vessel was nimble but fragile. A few direct hits would tear it apart. "Jump coordinates locked," Sarah reported, her hands dancing over the navigation. "Controls. 15 seconds to jump point." Those 15 seconds stretched like hours as more Ravager fighters joined the pursuit. Energy bolts flashed past the viewport, each one close enough to end their escape. The Star Whisper's shields flickered and sparked under the assault. 5 seconds, Sarah counted down. 3, 2, 1, jump! Space twisted around them as the Star Whisper leaped into hyperspace, leaving the dying system behind. In the sudden quiet that followed, Hyun could hear the soft weeping of the survivors in the cargo bay. They were safe for now, but they were also homeless, with nowhere to go and no way to save their world. "Captain," Nala said quietly, "what do we do now? Our people are dying back there." Hyun stared at the swirling lights of hyperspace outside the viewport. The Villani had never encountered a species like the Ravagers before, beings who conquered and consumed entire worlds without mercy or reason. His people had no allies, no trade partners, no one who owed them favors. They were alone in a galaxy that suddenly seemed much darker and more dangerous. "We send a message," he said finally, "to everyone, every species, every civilization we can reach." "A message saying what?" Nala asked. "That we need help." The communications officer's large eyes widened. "Captain, we have nothing to offer in return. No trade goods, no technology that other species would want. Why would anyone come to our aid?" Hyun was quiet for a long moment, thinking of the children crying in the cargo bay, of the billions of his people facing death or slavery on their homeworld. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said. "Somewhere in this galaxy, there must be someone who understands that." Over the next 6 hours, as the Star Whisper fled deeper into unknown space, they crafted their desperate plea. The message included everything they knew about the Ravagers, their ship designs, their tactics, their overwhelming firepower. They attached footage of the attack, showing Volani children hiding in underground shelters as their world burned above them. They provided their exact coordinates and a complete tactical analysis of the enemy fleet. What they could not offer was payment, strategic advantage, or anything of material value to a potential rescuer. The message concluded with Hyun's simple words. "We are the Volani of Kepler 442b. Our world is dying. Our people are being harvested like crops. We have no armies, no weapons, no wealth to offer those who might help us. We have only this desperate plea. If there is anyone out there who values life over profit, who fights for others rather than themselves, please hear us. We are running out of time." They broadcast the message on every frequency they could access, in every mathematical language they knew, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, would receive it and care enough to respond. Light years away, in humanity's deep space monitoring station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Lieutenant Commander Tae-Min Park was finishing his night shift when the alien transmission reached his sensors. At first, he thought it might be another false alarm. Space was full of strange signals that usually turned out to be natural phenomena or equipment malfunctions, but as he ran the signal through the translation protocols, his expression grew more serious. The mathematics were clearly artificial, the patterns too complex to be random. Someone was trying to communicate, and they sounded desperate. Tae-Min had spent 12 years monitoring deep space communications, hoping for humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. He had imagined that moment many times, perhaps a formal diplomatic greeting, or a trade proposal, or even a challenge from a hostile species. He had never imagined it would be a cry for help from a dying world. As the translation algorithms worked through the alien language, images began to appear on his screen. He saw the crystalline cities burning, the desperate defense ships being destroyed, the massive harvester vessels consuming everything in their path. His breath caught when the footage showed the alien children, beings that looked like luminescent, deer, but with clearly intelligent eyes filled with terror. "Jesus," he whispered, forgetting protocol. He had seen war footage before, but this was different. This was genocide, and someone was broadcasting it to the galaxy, hoping that anyone with a conscience might care enough to help. Taemin's hands shook slightly as he forwarded the transmission to Earth Command with the highest priority classification. Within minutes, it would reach Admiral So-Young Kim's desk. Within hours, it would be analyzed by every intelligence agency and military commander on Earth. He stared at the final image in the transmission. A group of alien children huddled together, in what looked like a bomb shelter, their large eyes reflecting the glow of emergency lighting. One of them, a small creature that could not have been more than 5 years old in human terms, was reaching toward the camera as if asking for help. Tae-Min had joined the space service to explore the unknown, to be part of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. He had never expected to become the first human to witness an alien species facing extinction. The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders as he completed his report and sent it down the chain of command. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the Volani survivors aboard the Star Whisper waited for an answer to their desperate plea. They had no way of knowing that their message had reached a species that had spent its entire history learning how to fight, how to sacrifice for others, and how to answer when someone called for help. The signal had found its way to humanity, and humanity was about to respond in the only way it knew how. Admiral So-Young Kim stood in the center of Earth Defense Command's main briefing room, watching the alien footage for the 7th time. Around the massive holographic display, 47 of humanity's top military leaders sat in stunned silence. The images of dying Volani children played on repeat, their luminescent forms huddled in underground shelters as their world burned above them. "These Ravagers," said General Wu Jin from the Marine Corps. "Their fleet strength is massive. 300 ships, maybe more. We're looking at a force that could crack most planetary defenses in the galaxy." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. The tactical analysis was clear. This was not a fight humanity could win through conventional means. The Ravager fleet outnumbered Earth's entire space navy, and their ships were larger, more heavily armed, and designed for planetary conquest. "So we don't fight conventionally," Kim said quietly. "We fight like humans." The room stirred uncomfortably. Defense Minister Han leaned forward, in his chair. Admiral, with respect, this is not our fight. These aliens offer us nothing in return for our help. No trade agreements, no technology transfer, no strategic advantage. We would be risking our entire fleet for strangers. Kim's jaw tightened. She had expected this argument. Minister, when did we start measuring the value of life by what it could do for us? When we became responsible for 8 billion human lives, Han shot back. Every ship we send to this alien world is a ship that won't be here to defend Earth if these Ravagers decide we're their next target. The debate continued for 2 hours, voices rising and falling as humanity's leaders struggled with the moral weight of the decision. Some argued for caution, for studying the situation longer, for attempting diplomatic contact with the Ravagers first. Others demanded immediate military intervention. Finally, Kim stood and walked to the holographic display. She paused the footage on the image of a young Villani reaching toward the camera, its large eyes filled with hope despite the terror around it. 20 years ago, she said, my daughter was trapped in a burning building in Seoul. A firefighter named Pak Dong-soo ran into that building even though the whole structure was about to collapse. He didn't know my daughter. She couldn't pay him. She offered him no strategic advantage. He saved her because that's what humans do. She turned to face the assembled leaders. Pak Dong-soo died pulling 3 children from that fire. At his funeral, someone asked his widow why he had risked everything for strangers. She said he didn't save strangers. He saved children. The fact that they weren't his children didn't make them worth any less. The room was silent now. The weight of her words, settling over them like a heavy blanket. We have the most powerful space fleet in human history, Kim continued. Ships designed to protect and defend. If we won't use them to save innocent lives, then what are we protecting? What kind of species do we want to be when we finally take our place among the stars? Defense Minister Han sighed deeply. Admiral, if we do this, if we send our fleet to fight for these aliens, we might all die. Our ships, our crews, our future. Kim looked around the room, meeting each leader's eyes in turn. Minister, if we don't do this, we might survive, but we won't deserve to. The vote was close. 24 in favor, 23 against. But it was enough. Within 6 hours, every military shipyard in the Sol system erupted into coordinated chaos. At Luna Station, Commander Ji-Woo Lee stood on the observation deck of the massive orbital facility, watching as humanity's finest warships prepared for humanity's first interstellar military intervention. The Sol's Fury, Earth's newest and most powerful dreadnought, hung in the center of the construction bay like a sleeping giant. Its armor plating gleamed under the station's work lights as engineering crews made final preparations. Around it, destroyers and cruisers took on supplies and ammunition at a frantic pace. How long until the fleet is ready? Lee asked his chief engineer, a grizzled veteran named Ko. 18 hours for full deployment, Ko replied, wiping grease from his hands. But, Commander, these ships were designed for system defense, not long-range assault. We're pushing everything to the limit. Lee nodded grimly. The human fleet would be operating at the very edge of their supply lines, with no friendly ports for resupply and no backup if things went wrong. It was the kind of mission that military planners called a calculated risk and soldiers called a suicide run. On Mars, Colony, Captain Dong-hyun Choi drilled his Marine battalions in the red dust of the training grounds. The men and women of the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force had volunteered for this mission to a man, even though most of them had never seen an alien before, let alone fought one. Listen up, Choi barked to his assembled troops. The enemy calls, themselves Ravagers, and that tells you everything you need to know about their tactics. They don't take prisoners, they don't negotiate, and they don't show mercy. But here's what they don't know about us. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years, and we've gotten very good at it. The Marines, nicknamed the Terran Devils by the other colonies, had trained for every environment from zero gravity to toxic atmospheres. Their adaptive armor could function in dozens of different planetary conditions, and their weapons were designed for maximum versatility. If humanity had to fight aliens, these were the humans they wanted doing the fighting. Sergeant Kwan, Choi called to his senior NCO. What's the first rule of ground combat? Adapt or die, sir, Kwan replied sharply. That's right. We don't know what these aliens fight like, but we know what humans fight like. We fight dirty, we fight smart, and we fight for each other. The Ravagers are about to learn why Earth is called a death world. Meanwhile, aboard the science vessel Discovery, Dr. Min-Ho Yang worked frantically in his xenobiology lab, trying to understand Volani physiology from the limited data in their distress signal. His team had already developed basic medical protocols and translation matrices, working around the clock to prepare for humanity's first contact with friendly aliens. "Doctor," called his assistant, Dr. Lim, "I'm seeing some unusual readings in the Volani brain scans. They appear to have specialized neural structures for telepathic communication." Yang nodded, his eyes red from hours of staring at alien biology. "Charts. That explains how they coordinate so well, but it also means they might be vulnerable to psychic attack. Make sure our medical teams are prepared for possible mental trauma among the survivors." The most dramatic preparation was taking place at Fighter Command, where Squadron Commander Yunji Kang was assembling the most unusual group of pilots in military history. These weren't all regular military personnel. When word had leaked about the mission, civilians had volunteered by the thousands. "I need to be clear about what we're asking," Kang told the assembled pilots. "This is a volunteer mission to save aliens we've never met, on a world we've never seen, against an enemy that outnumbers us 3-1. Anyone who wants to walk away can do so now with no questions asked." Not a single pilot moved. Among them was Jae Sung, a former racing pilot, who had won the Martian Grand Prix 3 years running. Beside him stood Ha Young, who had spent 5 years flying cargo haulers through asteroid fields. In the back row, a mining operation pilot named Tae-ho sat next to a woman who had flown rescue missions during the Titan colony disaster. "Why? Are you here?" Kang asked Jae Sung directly. The former racer looked uncomfortable for a moment, then straightened his shoulders. "Commander, I saw those alien kids in the footage. They looked scared. I have a daughter back on Earth, and if she was scared and trapped somewhere, I'd want someone to come help her. Doesn't matter if that someone was human or alien." Similar conversations were happening across the fleet as humanity prepared for its first act of interstellar altruism. In the officers' mess of the Soul's Fury, Captain Yu sat with his senior staff, reviewing tactical plans for a battle they might not survive. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "the enemy has superior firepower and numbers. Our only advantages are speed, coordination, and the element of surprise." "Don't forget our most important advantage," Yu replied grimly. "We're fighting for something we believe in. The Ravagers are just following their nature. We're choosing to be something better than our nature." As the fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Kim stood in her ready room, staring out at the stars. In her hand, she held a photo of her daughter, the same daughter who had been saved by a brave firefighter 20 years ago. On her desk lay the translated Volani message, with its simple plea for help from anyone who valued life over profit. Her communications officer's voice came through the intercom. "Admiral, the fleet reports ready for departure. All ships are standing by for your orders." Kim took a deep breath and activated the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Admiral Kim to all ships. Today, humanity takes its first step as a truly spacefaring civilization. We go not as conquerors or traders, but as helpers, as friends to those who need us. Let history record that when aliens first called for help, humanity answered." She paused, thinking of all the arguments against this mission, all the logical reasons to stay home and protect their own interests. Then she thought of the Volani, children in those underground shelters, waiting for help that might never come. "Fleet, this is your admiral. We are not just carrying weapons to this fight." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system to find a scene of devastation that no simulation could have prepared them for. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the Soul's Fury, watching through the main view screen, as massive Ravager harvester ships stripped away entire continents from the Volani homeworld. The planet that had once been a jewel of crystalline cities and vast forests now looked like a partially eaten apple, with huge chunks torn from its surface. "Tactical report," Kim ordered, her voice steady despite the horror before them. 312 enemy vessels confirmed, reported Commander Park from the sensor station. "Approximately 60% of the planet's surface has been consumed. We're detecting massive underground cities where survivors are hiding, but their power signatures are weakening." Kim nodded grimly. They had arrived just in time to witness the final stages of genocide. The Ravager ships moved with mechanical efficiency, their harvesting beams turning mountains into raw materials and forests into fuel. It was industrialized destruction on a scale that turned her stomach. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "I'm picking up a weak signal from the outer system. It's using the same transmission protocols as the original distress call." "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the bridge of an alien vessel. The being who appeared before them was clearly non-human. Tall and graceful, with luminescent skin and large, expressive eyes that reminded Kim of Earth's deer. Despite the obvious stress and exhaustion on his face, he carried himself with dignity. "This is Captain Hyun of the Vellani research vessel Star Whisper," the alien said, his words translated by the fleet's computers. "Please identify yourselves. Are you here to help, or should we prepare for another attack?" Dr. Yang stepped forward from his position at the science station. His translation protocols had worked perfectly, but now came the real test of first contact between species. "Captain Hyun, I am Dr. Yang of the human vessel Soul's Fury. We received your distress signal. We are here to help." The silence that followed stretched for several heartbeats. Then Captain Hyun's large eyes filled with what could only be tears of relief. "You came," he whispered. "You actually came. But we have nothing to offer you in return." Admiral Kim moved into view of the communication screen. "Captain Hyun, you asked for help. That's all we needed to hear. It took 3 hours for the damaged Star Whisper to limp across the system to reach the human fleet. During that time, Kim's tactical officers worked frantically to analyze the Ravager formation and identify weaknesses. The enemy ships were larger and more heavily armed than anything in the human fleet, but they moved with the slow confidence of predators who had never faced serious resistance. "Their tactics are primitive," observed Commander Lee from his destroyer, Squadron. "They rely on overwhelming firepower and individual ship strength. No coordination, no complex maneuvers. They fight like apex predators, not like soldiers." When the Star Whisper finally docked with the Soul's Fury, the first meeting between humans and aliens took place in the main hangar bay. Captain Hyun emerged. From his ship flanked by several of his crew, all of them moving with the fluid grace of beings who had evolved in harmony with their environment. The size difference was immediately apparent. The Vellani were tall and slender, with elongated limbs and features that seemed almost too delicate for the harsh realities of space travel. But their eyes held intelligence and determination that transcended species barriers. "Captain Hyun," Admiral Kim said, stepping forward, with Dr. Yang beside her. "Welcome aboard. I'm Admiral Kim, and this is Dr. Yang, our xenobiologist. We're honored to make first contact with your people, even under these circumstances." Hyun's translator device struggled with some of the formal phrases, but the meaning came through clearly. "Admiral Kim, Dr. Yang, I am grateful beyond words that you have come. But I must ask, why? You know nothing about us. We have no trade to offer, no strategic value to your people. Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Kim thought of her conversation with the Defense Council, of the firefighter who had saved her daughter, of all the arguments about strategic value and cost-benefit analysis. "Captain, when someone is drowning, you don't ask if they can pay for swimming lessons. You throw them a rope." The meeting was interrupted by alarms throughout the ship. The Ravager fleet had detected the human vessels and was moving to intercept. Through the hangar bay's atmospheric shield, they could see the massive enemy ships turning toward them, like hungry predators sensing new prey. "Admiral," came the voice of the tactical officer over the intercom. "Enemy fleet is moving to engage. 3 battle groups converging on our position. Estimated time to weapons range, 47 minutes. Kim turned to Captain Hyun. "We need to get your people to safety and learn everything you can tell us about Ravager tactics. Then we're going to show them why it was a mistake to attack your world." The next hour passed in a blur of preparation and desperate planning. The Vellani survivors were transferred to the fleet's medical ships while Captain Hyun worked with human tactical officers to share everything his people had learned about their enemies. The Ravagers used brute force tactics, overwhelming their opponents with superior firepower rather than clever maneuvering. They had conquered dozens of worlds using these methods, crushing any resistance through sheer weight of numbers. They expect their enemies to break and run when faced with superior force, Hyun explained. No species they have encountered has ever stood and fought when outnumbered. Commander Kang listened from her fighter-ready room, where her mixed squadron, of military pilots and civilian volunteers was making final preparations. "Well," she said grimly, "they've never fought humans before." The battle began badly for the human fleet. The Ravager ships opened fire at extreme range, their massive plasma cannons sending bolts of energy that could vaporize a small asteroid. The human vessels, smaller and more maneuverable, danced between the incoming fire, but they were taking hits. The destroyer Incheon took a direct hit to its engine section and began to fall behind, trailing plasma and debris. The cruiser Busan lost its forward shields and was forced to withdraw from the front line. Against the overwhelming firepower of the Ravager fleet, it seemed like the humans were just delaying the inevitable. Then Admiral Kim gave the order that changed everything. "All ships execute Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was a theoretical battle strategy that had been developed by human military planners but never tested in actual combat. It was based on the assumption that humanity's greatest advantage in space warfare would be the same advantage they had always held on Earth, the willingness to fight as a coordinated whole rather than as individuals. The human fleet suddenly scattered, breaking formation in a way that seemed like retreat to the Ravager commanders. The enemy ships pursued, confident that they were chasing broken opponents, but the humans weren't running. They were repositioning. Fighter Squadron Commander Kang led her pilots through the asteroid field at the edge of the system, using the floating rocks as cover and concealment. Her mixed group of civilian volunteers moved through the debris field with the skill of people who had spent their lives navigating dangerous spaces. Racing pilots who could thread the needle at 300 kilometers per hour, cargo haulers who could dock with a spinning station. In a storm, miners who could fly through fields of explosive gas. They all brought their specialized skills to bear. "Tiger Squadron to all units," Kang transmitted. "We're beginning our attack run. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their big ships. We're trying to blind them." The human fighters swept through the Ravager formation like angry hornets, targeting sensor arrays and communication equipment rather than attempting to penetrate the massive ship's armor. The Ravagers, used to enemies who either fought ship to ship or fled entirely, had no defense against swarm tactics. Meanwhile, Commander Lee's destroyer squadron executed a maneuver that would be remembered in military history as Soul's Gambit. Using the planet's magnetic field and gravitational pull, they slingshot around the world at tremendous speed, building up velocity until they were moving fast enough to punch through the Ravager formation from an impossible angle. The lead Ravager, command ship, a massive vessel the size of a small city, never saw them coming. Lee's destroyers hit it from below and behind, their concentrated fire targeting the ship's command center. The explosion that followed lit up the entire system as the enemy flagship broke apart. But the victory came at a cost. 2 of Lee's destroyers were caught in the blast, and the Soul's Fury itself had taken severe damage holding the center of the formation. Admiral Kim stood on her bridge as damage reports flooded in, watching her tactical display as red warnings flashed across the screen. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, "we've inflicted serious damage on their fleet, but they still outnumber us 2-1, and their reinforcements are jumping into the system." Through the view screen, Kim could see new Ravager ships materializing from hyperspace, an entire second fleet that had been summoned to deal with these unexpected opponents. The humans had fought brilliantly, using tactics and coordination that the Ravagers had never encountered before. But mathematics was mathematics. The Ravager High Command's flagship hung in space like a metallic mountain, its communication arrays buzzing with confused transmissions from across the fleet. War leader Krex, a scarred veteran who had conquered 47 worlds, stood before the tactical display with growing unease. The readouts made no sense. "These new aliens," he growled to his subordinates. "They fight like nothing we have encountered. They coordinate like a hive mind, but think like individuals. They sacrifice themselves for others without hesitation. What manner of species fights like this?" His tactical officer, a younger Ravager named Voss, studied the battle reports with confusion. "War leader, their ships are inferior to ours in every measurable way. Smaller, lighter armed, less armored. Yet they have destroyed 12 of our vessels while losing only 4 of their own." Krex's claws scraped against the metal console as he watched the human fighters dart through his formation like insects. But these insects had stings, His flagship's sensor array was half-blind thanks to their precise attacks on communications equipment. "They target our eyes instead of our hearts," he muttered. "They blind us before they strike, and they work together in ways that should be impossible." On the human side of the battle, the coordination that so confused the Ravagers was the result of centuries of military evolution. Aboard the Soul's Fury, Admiral Kim watched her tactical display as reports flowed in from across the fleet. Every ship captain, every fighter pilot, every Marine knew their role in the larger plan. "Captain Choi," she called to the Marine commander, "are your people ready for planetary assault?" "Yes, Admiral," came the reply from the Marine transport ship. The Volani survivors have provided us with detailed maps of the underground cities. We can establish beachheads in the cave systems and begin evacuating civilians. The Marine operation was perhaps the most dangerous part of the human strategy. While the fleet fought in space, Choi's Marines would drop onto the partially harvested planet and attempt to rescue Volani survivors from the underground cities. It was a mission that required them to fight through Ravager ground forces while protecting alien civilians they had never met. "Remember," Choi told his Marines as they prepared for the drop, "these people have been hiding underground for days, maybe weeks. They're scared, they're hungry, and they've never seen a human before. We need to be warriors and protectors at the same time." Sergeant Borahan checked her squad's equipment one final time. Her Marines were equipped with adaptive armor that could function in the planet's lower gravity and translation devices that would allow basic communication with the Volani survivors. More importantly, they carried medical supplies and emergency rations for the refugees. "Sergeant," asked Private Min, a young Marine on his first combat deployment, "what if the aliens don't trust us? What if they think we're just another kind of Ravager?" Han looked at the young soldier with understanding. She remembered her own first deployment, the fear and uncertainty of facing the unknown. "Min, you've seen the footage of their children? Does it matter what species they are? Children in danger are children in danger." The drop pods launched from the transport ships like metal meteors, carrying the Marines through the planet's atmosphere toward the underground cities. Han's pod hit the surface hard, its retro rockets firing to cushion the landing in a clearing surrounded by the crystalline ruins of a Volani town. The devastation was worse than the satellite images had suggested. The Ravager harvesting beams had cut deep trenches through the landscape, turning what had once been a garden world into a scarred wasteland. In the distance, Han could see the massive harvester ships continuing their work, stripping away entire hills and forests. "Squad, form up," she ordered as her Marines emerged from their pods. "We have civilians to save." The entrance to the underground city was hidden beneath the rubble of a collapsed building. Han's squad worked quickly to clear the debris, using their armor's enhanced strength to move stones that would have taken a dozen unaugmented humans to lift. As they broke through into the tunnel system below, they were met by the sound of alien voices speaking in fear. The first Volani they encountered was a young female named Yuki, who had been serving as a lookout near the tunnel entrance. She took one look at the armored humans and stumbled backward, her large eyes wide with terror. "It's okay," Han said, activating her translation device. "We're here to help. We came because Captain Hyun asked for assistance." The mention of Hyun's name caused a ripple of recognition through the group of Volani who had gathered behind Yuki. They spoke rapidly among themselves in their musical language, their telepathic abilities allowing them to share thoughts and emotions directly. "You're not Ravagers," Yuki said finally, wonder creeping into her voice. "You came to help us?" "Yes," Han replied simply. "We're humans, and we're here to get you to safety." The evacuation of the underground city took 6 hours under constant threat of attack. Han's squad had to fight off 2 separate Ravager patrol groups while shepherding nearly 200 Volani civilians through the tunnel system toward the extraction point. The aliens moved with fluid grace even when frightened, but they were clearly not built for the harsh realities of warfare. During one particularly intense firefight, Han found herself protecting a group of Volani children who had become separated from their parents. The young aliens huddled around her as she returned fire at a squad of Ravager soldiers, her armor's shields sparking under the enemy's energy weapons. "Stay down," she told them, though she doubted they understood the words. One of the children, a small creature with fur that glowed softly in the darkness, reached up and touched her armored hand. Suddenly, Han felt a wave of calm wash over her mind. The child was using its telepathic abilities to ease her stress and fear, sharing its own innocent trust that everything would be all right. It was the first time a human had experienced Valani telepathy, and the sensation was both alien and profoundly moving. "Thank you, little one," Han whispered, feeling tears she couldn't wipe away inside her helmet. Meanwhile, in space, the battle was reaching a critical point. The human fleet had inflicted significant damage on the Ravagers, but the enemy reinforcements were beginning to tip the balance. Admiral Kim stood on her damaged bridge, watching as more and more red icons appeared on her tactical display. "Dr. Yang," she called to the science team working frantically in the ship's main computer core. "Please tell me you've made progress with those ancient weapons." "We're close, Admiral," came Yang's strained voice over the intercom. "Captain Hyun has been able to access the Valani historical archives, and we've located the control protocols for the orbital platforms. But activating them requires a combination of human technical expertise and Valani telepathic interface." The breakthrough came when Dr. Yang realized that the ancient weapons weren't just technological, they were biotechnological, designed to be operated by beings with telepathic abilities. The platforms had been dormant for over 1,000 years because no one with the right mental capabilities had been available to activate them. "Admiral," Yang reported, "we need a direct telepathic link between a Valani operator and the weapon system. But the platforms are heavily damaged, and we'll need human engineering teams to make the necessary repairs before they can function." Kim made the decision instantly. "Take a shuttle to the nearest platform. Captain Hyun, are you willing to risk your life to save your people?" The Valani captain's response was immediate. "Admiral, my people have been hiding underground while strangers fight and die for us. I would be honored to take this risk." The repair mission was carried out under fire as Ravager fighters attempted to stop the human engineering teams from reaching the orbital platforms. Commander Kang's pilots flew desperate escort missions, buying time for the engineers to work while enemy ships closed in from all sides. "Tiger Squadron, this is Kang," she transmitted to her mixed group of military and civilian pilots. "We need to hold this position for another 20 minutes. I know you're all running low on fuel and ammunition, but those platforms are our only hope." Among her pilots was Jae Sung, the former racing champion who had volunteered for the mission after seeing the footage of Valani children. His fighter was damaged, his weapons nearly exhausted, but he continued to weave through the enemy formation with the precision that had made him famous on the racing circuits. "Commander," he transmitted, "I've got 3 Ravager fighters on my tail, and my engines are overheating. Permission to execute Emergency Protocol 12. Protocol 12 was a desperate maneuver that involved ramming enemy ships, a tactic that was almost certainly fatal for the pilot. Kim heard the transmission from her command chair and felt her heart clench. "Negative, Jae Sung. Pull back and regroup." "Sorry, Admiral, but there's no time for that." The former racer's fighter accelerated toward the largest Ravager vessel in the formation, his damaged engines screaming in protest. At the last second, he ejected, his escape pod tumbling away as his fighter struck the enemy ship's weapon array in a brilliant explosion. The sacrifice bought the engineering teams the time they needed. Dr. Yang and Captain Hyun worked together. In the ancient control chamber of the orbital platform, human technology interfacing with Valani telepathy to awaken weapons that had slept for a millennium. Squadron Commander Kang's remaining fighters screamed through space toward the collision point, their engines pushed beyond safe limits. Behind her flew the survivors of her mixed squadron, military pilots, civilian volunteers, racing champions, and cargo haulers who had all volunteered to save alien lives they had never seen. "All fighters, form up on me," Kang transmitted, her voice steady despite the desperate nature of their mission. "We're going to extract the Admiral and her essential crew. This is going to be very precise and very dangerous. The plan was insane by any reasonable military standard. They would have to dock with the Soul's Fury while it was on a collision course with an enemy vessel, evacuate key personnel, and escape before the impact that would destroy both ships. The timing would have to be perfect down to the second." "Tiger. 1 to Admiral Kim," Kang called to the dreadnought. "Prepare for emergency evacuation. We're coming in hot." On the bridge of the Soul's Fury, Admiral Kim stood watching the massive Ravager command ship grow larger in the view screen. The enemy, Vessel was the size of a small city, its hull bristling with weapons and armor that could shrug off the fire from entire fleets. But it was also slow and ungainly, unable to change course quickly enough to avoid the collision Kim had planned. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the fighters are requesting permission to dock and evacuate essential personnel." Kim shook her head. "We've made our choice. All hands will stay at their posts and see this through." But her crew had other ideas. Throughout the ship, men and women who had followed her across the galaxy to save strangers began leaving their stations and heading for the docking bays. They weren't abandoning their posts. They were following orders from their hearts instead of their heads. "Admiral," called her communications officer, "with respect, we didn't come this far to watch you die alone. If you're staying, we're staying. If you're leaving, we're all leaving together." It was mutiny in the most beautiful sense of the word, an entire crew refusing to let their commander sacrifice herself unnecessarily. Kim felt tears sting her eyes as she looked around at these people who had become her family over years of service together. "Fine," she said with a slight smile, "but only essential personnel evacuate. The rest of you get to the escape pods." Kongs. Fighters performed the most dangerous docking maneuver in human history, matching velocity with a ship that was seconds away from a catastrophic collision. Her pilots used every trick they had learned in their civilian careers: racing precision, cargo handling expertise, mining operation timing, to pull off what should have been impossible. The evacuation took place in organized chaos as crew members poured into the fighters and escape pods. Admiral Kim was among the last to leave, taking one final look around the bridge of the ship that had carried them across the galaxy on humanity's first mission of interstellar mercy. "Goodbye, old friend," she whispered to the Soul's Fury, then ran for the docking bay. The fighters and escape pods cleared the dreadnought with seconds to spare. Behind them, the Soul's Fury continued its collision course with the Ravager command ship, its autopilot systems locked onto their target. The impact, when it came, lit up the entire star system. The explosion destroyed both vessels completely, but it accomplished its goal. The Ravager command ship never reached the planet, and the massive debris field created by the collision disrupted the enemy fleet's formation. With their flagship gone and their command structure shattered, the surviving Ravager ships found themselves facing a coordinated assault from both the human fleet and the awakened ancient weapons platforms. "All units, this is Acting Admiral Lee," came the voice of the destroyer squadron commander over the fleet communication system. "Press the attack. Make their sacrifice count." The final phase of the battle was swift and decisive. The ancient orbital platforms, guided by the combined expertise of human engineers and Volani telepaths, swept through the Ravager formation with weapons that had been designed by a civilization that understood the price of freedom. The platform's energy beams carved through enemy ships like swords through paper, each shot guided by the memories of those who had built them to protect their world. Dr. Yang worked alongside Captain Hyun in the control chamber of the lead platform, watching as the ancient weapons systematically dismantled the Ravager fleet. The biotechnological systems responded to the Volani's telepathic commands, while human tactical coordination maximized their effectiveness. "The weapon consciousness is fully awakened now," Hyun reported, his mind still linked to the platform's living systems. "It remembers its purpose, to protect those who cannot protect themselves." On the planet's surface, Sergeant Han's Marines continued their evacuation efforts even as the space battle raged overhead. They had established a secure perimeter around the underground city and were systematically moving Volani civilians to safety. The aliens moved with increasing confidence as they realized that these strange armored beings truly were there to help. "Sergeant," called Corporal Lim from the tunnel entrance, "we've got incoming transport ships. Looks like the Admiral's medical vessels are here for the refugees." Han nodded, watching as a group of Volani children played near her position despite the danger surrounding them. One of them, the small, glowing creature who had comforted her during the firefight, approached and touched her armored hand again. This time, the telepathic contact carried images, the child's memories of home before the Ravagers came, and its hope for a future where such things might exist again. "We're going to make sure you get that future, little one," Han promised, though she knew the child couldn't understand her words. The meaning came through anyway, carried by the emotion behind them. As the last Ravager ships fled the system or were destroyed by the orbital platforms, a strange quiet settled over the battlefield. For the first time in days, the harvesting. Beams stopped firing. The massive machines that had been consuming the planet's surface went silent. The sky above the Vallani homeworld was clear of enemy ships. Captain Hyun stood on the observation deck of the human medical ship that was treating Vallani refugees, looking out at the stars that no longer held the threat of invasion. Beside him stood Admiral Kim, who had been rescued from the evacuation and was now dealing with the aftermath of humanity's first interstellar military intervention. "Admiral," Hyun said quietly, "I need to ask you something that has been troubling me. Why did your people do this? You lost ships, crews, friends, all to save strangers you had never met. In all our contact with other species, we have never encountered such behavior." Kim was quiet for a moment, thinking of all the arguments that had been made against this mission, all the logical reasons to stay home and protect their own interests. "Captain, 20 years ago my daughter was saved by a man who died pulling children from a burning building. He didn't know them, they couldn't pay him, they offered him no advantage. He saved them because they needed saving." She gestured toward Dal, the viewport, where human and Vallani medical teams were working together to treat the wounded. "We came here because you called for help, and helping people in danger is what humans do. It's not about profit or strategy or what we get in return. It's about what kind of species we want to be." Hyun's large eyes reflected the starlight as he considered her words. "Your species fascinates us, Admiral. You possess the technology and tactical skill to be conquerors, yet you choose to be protectors. You could have demanded payment, territory, resources in exchange for your aid. Instead, you ask for nothing." "We ask for one thing," Kim corrected gently. "Friendship, alliance. The chance to build something better together than either of us could build alone." The official first contact protocols were established over the following days as the combined human-Vallani fleet worked to repair the damaged planet and establish permanent defenses. The ancient orbital platforms were restored to full function, creating a shield that would protect the system from future attacks. Human engineers worked alongside Vallani biotechnicians, sharing knowledge and techniques that benefited both species. Dr. Yang published the first comprehensive study of Vallani, telepathy, while Vallani scientists shared their biotechnology expertise with human researchers. The exchange of knowledge was voluntary and mutual, based on trust rather than contracts or treaties, but the most significant development came from an unexpected source. The Vallani had been monitoring communications from across the galaxy, and other species had taken notice of the battle in the Kepler 442 system. Some were inspired by humanity's selfless actions, while others viewed humans as a dangerous new variable in galactic politics. "Admiral," Captain Hyun reported during one of their daily briefings, "we're receiving transmissions from 17 different star systems. Some are offering alliance and trade agreements. Others are demanding to know humanity's intentions regarding territorial expansion." Kim nodded grimly. She had expected this. Humanity's debut on the galactic stage had been dramatic and unprecedented. They had announced their presence not through exploration or trade, but by answering a cry for help from strangers. Such behavior was so unusual that other species didn't know how to interpret it. "What do you recommend, Captain?" she asked. "Honesty," Hyun replied. "Tell them exactly what you told me.